the same summer that we got The Abyss, we got Leviathan and Deep Star 6, because everybody had to have their fucking underwater movie, and our underwater movie is best underwater movie.
All right. So he's Tony. I'm Mike. We're here to watch the world burn. In this episode, we'll be covering 2016's Anthropoid, directed by Sean Ellis, written also by Sean Ellis and Anthony Freeman. I won't let Tony go through the cast because there's a lot of German names. I have problems enough saying American names. Take it away, Tony.
As Jan Kubis is played by Jamie Dornan. Yusuf Gabchik is played by Cillian Murphy, and those are our two main characters in the film. We have Maria Kavarnikova, who is played by Charlotte Laban, and we have Lenka Favkova, who is played by Anna Geislerova.
So anyway, like Tony hinted at, the story covers Operation Anthropoid, which takes place in World War II, where you have a group of parachutists who are they what nationality are they?
They are Czechoslovakian.
Okay, yeah.
They're all Czechoslovakian citizens, but when in 1938 Hitler said, "Look, give us Czechoslovakia," and everybody was just like, well, okay, let's just not go to war. So they gave Germany Czechoslovakia. So without firing,
no shots fired.
Yeah, no shots fired, and Germany basically laid claim to all of Czechoslovakia.
Yeah. So Operation Anthropoid was an attempt of assassination of Reinhard Heydrich, who was the Butcher of Prague.
Yes.
As they called him, basically because he was just an asshole.
Well, he was more.
He was the man behind the final solution, the extermination of the Jews.
Yes. Yeah. Well, not only that, but I mean, in the first week of him actually being, brought to power, he had 5,000 Czechoslovakians killed, and a lot of them were simply members of the military that were arrested when Czechoslovakia was ceded to Germany. I was going to say, I mean, a little bit about, the production. The numbers that I read was that this was a $6.5 million film, which, considering the scope of this movie, is super cheap.
It is cheap. There's not a whole lot going on in this film, though, as far as sets and things like that. You can tell everything was shot on location. There's no tanks in this film. There's no planes in this film. There's one like an assault vehicle, but it's not even a tank. Yeah, it's a wheeled vehicle. So I mean, yeah. So there wasn't a whole lot in the production. I'm not taking anything away from that. They accomplished quite a bit on a tight budget. When I looked at it, it looked like a $20 million film. So exactly, I will say that.
Exactly. I mean, is it Saving Private Ryan? No, but they weren't trying to make Saving Private Ryan. This was not a big war epic. This is the movie that Valkyrie wanted to be. And I don't know if you saw Valkyrie, but that's the movie with Tom Cruise. Yeah, and Tom Cruise and the assassination attempt on Hitler. And, again, there's nothing particularly expensive about that film. There's no big battle scenes. There's no airplanes. There's no tanks. You have a lot of wardrobe and a lot of guns that fire blanks, but
there's more going on in that movie. Not only that too, but your $6 million budget would have been blown out of the water just because Tom Cruise is in that movie. That alone is like $15-20 million. So
yeah, no, I get it.
And not only that, Tom Cruise puts asses in seats. While Cillian Murphy is a good actor, he does not put asses in seats.
Well, he does. He just doesn't necessarily put American asses in seats. But if you go to the UK, he's a draw.
Sure.
And European audiences, he's a draw. So
right, we're not in Europe. We're in the United States, and let's face it, the United States is still short of China, the biggest market out there. So
sure. No. I get that. I really do. I understand all that. But again, this looks like an infinitely more expensive movie than it was.
It does.
It is beautifully shot. It is like I said, everything is shot on location, and it's the location where these events actually happened. So I mean, the amount of research that went into this film, and then we'll get to this in a bit, but there was, from my knowledge, there was one set that was built, and it was built specifically to exactly replicate the exact location, and it was so they could blow the crap out of it. But that actually it is a real place. They really did build it, and they built it specifically to mimic the exact thing. So much so that the director of the film said that if you saw our movie and you went to the actual location, you would be you could not be able to tell that we didn't shoot in that location.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of fascinating. But apparently that's where a larger chunk of this particular film's budget went, was recreating that. So Jan and Josef are parachutists. They drop in covertly in the woods outside of Prague. They're about 20, 30 miles outside of Prague. They're dropped in with several other groups of parachutists who are there to basically help the resistance.
Yeah. And each has their own mission that they got to do.
Exactly. And there's a bit of a mishap on the landing, and Cillian Murphy's character, Josef, he basically has a tree branch that really gouges his ankle really good, so he's wounded immediately. They're found by some Czechoslovakian locals and are basically, hey, we kind of figured that you're part of the resistance, or that you're going to meet with the resistance. Come back to the house and we'll give you some soup. And during the time that it takes for him to, get back to the house and start feeding them, they realize something's not quite right, that they've actually been taken in by collaborators.
How much do the Germans pay you for turning in your fellow countryman, huh?
And the collaborators are trying to call the Nazis and have them arrested. So, they actually wind up killing one of the men that rescued them from the woods.
Jan, and this is a plot arc for Jan. Jan is not comfortable with shooting people and killing people because his hamstring, he lets the guy go. And I thought right there that, okay, we're going to see this motherfucker later. He's going to identify him. But that doesn't happen. So anyway, so they leave. They go into town and they get help. And they refer to a doctor to help stitch up Josef's foot.
Specifically, he's a veterinarian. He's not actually a doctor.
Yeah, he's a veterinarian.
He is resistant. He is resistance friendly. So he stitches up their wound and lets them stay in his office overnight while he goes and tries to actually find members of the resistance that these guys are supposed to meet up with.
And so they actually do that. They find the appropriate resistance members and introduce them. They have some little code phrase that they throw out there so they can identify themselves. I can't remember exactly what it was. Do you know what I'm talking about?
They were given the name of somebody that they were supposed to meet once they got to Prague, and that was supposed to be the leader of the particular resistance. Mm-hmm. And the problem is that he had been captured by the Nazis and arrested and interrogated, and because of that arrest, the Nazis had all but crushed the resistance as it existed. The other thing about that is that the resistance had lost their radio, that they had been receiving transmissions from London. So the resistance, basically London, the Czechoslovakian government in London did not know what was going on with the resistance, and the resistance did not know what the Czechoslovakian government was sending help or supplies or anything. So this is like really a fog of war, component to this, that one of the side missions of the other groups of parachutists is to reestablish communication with London. But like I said, the resistance had mostly been crushed. You have a lot of politics and people that had suffered through, like, a year of Prague being under siege by the Nazis, and they're not willing to risk it because so many of their friends and comrades had, been arrested and been tortured to death and been killed, essentially. So, it's really, this is not a light and airy movie by any stretch of the imagination.
No, it's not.
It's really dark stuff.
Yeah, it's properly depressing. But anyways, but there is an exchange there, and they say something that lets both sides know and identify that they're both friendly. I just can't remember what it was. I was paying a little closer attention.
He asks him about the train station.
That's it.
It's a multicolored rose garden at a train station in one of the towns where Jan is supposedly, to have been born. And when he asks him about it, he says, "Yeah, well, they didn't notice that it's actually the
flag,
Czechoslovakian, the flag of our country when you view it from the sky." When you view it from above. So that was the little code that they knew that they were telling the truth, that he really obviously was a patriot, that he really did grow up in that town, and he really did know what that train station was. So it's clever. It's one of those little details that, I love that kind of stuff, in that it's not obvious. It's not a code word. It's nothing like that. It's asking him about the town that he grew up in, and the only way that he could answer that question is if he had grown up in that town. So it's really well done. It's really well handled, and you don't know where they're going with it until they decide to tell you where they're going with it.
So anyway, so they identify, and they both know that they're friendly, and then they drop the bomb on them on why they're there.
And basically, Operation Anthropoid, they've decided that they are going to assassinate the Obengruber, the governor, the Nazi governor, who has been running Czechoslovakia at this point. And technically, he is the third highest ranking officer in the Nazi Reich. And now that, you have a lot of scared Czechoslovakian resistance fighters that, after they saw what had happened to Poland, they don't want that to be the fate of Czechoslovakia. So there's a lot of tiptoeing around this one. Nobody wants to act hastily. The political folks are like, hey, London doesn't know the situation here. Maybe we should reestablish communications with them before you guys proceed on this mission, because, this man butchers indiscriminately. He doesn't have any problem with lining people up against a wall and opening fire.
No, he doesn't.
and they get the radio back up. They reestablish communication with London. You have the political arm of the resistance that's actively trying to shut this operation down because it's seen as too risky. And then you have the, military personnel that were literally sent in specifically for this mission, and they are gung-ho about it. They basically want to let the Allies know that, yes, there is a resistance in Czechoslovakia, and yes, we are still trying to fight for our freedom and get out from under the thumb of Germany. And that's kind of the whole point of this, is that they want to prove to the Allies that, yeah, there are people here that want you to come here. We're not just sitting on the sidelines or being drafted in, because there was a contingent of Czechoslovakia that they were very pro-Nazi. They actually welcomed the Third Reich, rolling in and saying, hey, yeah, thanks. But the other thing, and I kind of love about this film, is when they deal with the collaborators in this film. And that's the whole, undertone of this film is, yes, the resistance has been broken up. Yes, a lot of these men have been executed. The people that escaped, you don't know if they're really honestly patriots and resistance fighters, or if they're potentially collaborators who are trying to basically feed information to the Nazis in exchange for their own safety. And so there's this current of distrust throughout everything that's going on. And especially between the members of the resistance, and it's beautifully handled. It's, again, until you actually get to the end credits, you don't really know where a lot of people stand with everything that's going on. So, and I really enjoyed that.
I'm going to disagree with you there. In the beginning, they play that off pretty well, especially in the very beginning with the two people in the woods that find them.
Mm-hmm.
But after that, it's pretty easy to tell. I picked off that one dude right off the bat. It's like, you are a fucking traitor. You're going to turn coat. And sure enough, he fucking does. The blonde-haired guy that sees the $10 million fucking reward for that shit. It's like, you saw the motherfucker coming a mile.
Yeah. Oh, no. That one.
Now,
yes.
having said that,
definitely saw.
There was a couple points where you had the political guys, you know, trying to pull a fast one over the other dudes, try to keep them pulling off that operation. There, you really didn't know. It's like, are you working for the other side, or are you really just trying to cover your own ass because you know the repercussions that are going to happen when this is all said and done?
And that was the performance. That performance there is what really stuck out to me, because if it had been written, it could have been written really super hammy. It could have been written, you know, super like, oh, I don't want to pick a side. It wasn't that at all. It never felt that way while you're watching it. Yes, he wants to support the resistance, but what he doesn't want to do is get 5,000 people killed.
All orders have come direct from the Czech government in London.
So this is about the Czech government in London trying to impress the Allies? It was the Allies that gave us to the Germans in the first place.
But anyway, so the resistance hooks them up with a safe house, the family they hang out with, and then they also give them some people to help out. Two ladies. Help me with. Hang on, their names are
Lenka.
So you have Marie and Lenka. Yeah. Marie's the dark-haired one. Lenka is the red-haired lady. And here's probably one of my favorite parts of this movie is the ladies invite the two guys out for like a dancing or something like that.
It's New Year's Eve. It's a New Year's Eve party.
That's right. It's a New Year's Eve party. So they show up there, and these ladies are decked out. You know, they're looking nice. You know, they're in the nines. And when they walk in, every German soldier is looking at them. And Joseph is like, I appreciate you ladies are trying to look good and all this stuff, you know, and that's cool, but that's not cool because you're drawing unwanted attention. And here's what we'll need you to do. I'm gonna need you to slap me in the face and then walk off. And that's exactly what she does. She says something, you know, loud, slaps him in the face. The two ladies get up and walk out. You see how the German soldiers laugh, and there's no longer attention or heat on them anymore. That was very brilliantly done, and that probably is my second favorite scene in that movie.
So I have like 5 really standout scenes in this movie, and we'll get to that after we get done going through the plot. But so Jan and Joseph are hooked up, and basically Maria and Lenka are basically there to make sure that Jan and Joseph can walk around Prague and not draw anybody's attention. If it's a single guy walking around, he could catch some flack. But if it's a couple and they're walking through the park or walking through a cemetery or whatever, they're far less likely to catch the notice of the Nazis and the SS, you know, spies, soldiers, whatever, that are throughout the city. So for the next portion of the film, it's basically them studying Heydrich's movements and figuring out exactly what their plan needs to be. And, you know, they're noticing what time he arrives, what time he leaves. Is he escorted? Does he have, you know, armed guards with him? And it's also when they're trying to figure out who's who. Because, you know, again, you have the military members of the resistance, and they are like, yes, we need to kill this guy. We need to let everybody know that we are still here, that we're still fighting. And you have the political guys, and they're like, hey, you know what? We should not do this. We should do smaller operations or go after, you know, just killing, you know, groups of German soldiers, because then we're not going to draw down the fury of the Third Reich and get a lot of innocent people killed. And ultimately, the safe house, the family that has the safe house where Jan and Yusuf are staying, they are kind of involved in the resistance in a very low-key kind of way. They know names, they know faces, they know dates, but they don't know what's going on. And again, it's handled beautifully in that they never ask questions that could potentially, if they got captured or they got questioned, that the Nazis would find out what these men are there to do and what their mission is. So turns out that some orders get intercepted. They get seen by an informant. Heydrich is being transferred to Paris, which the irony of this is, and I don't know how many people actually read into this, but Heydrich was brought in because he was ruthless and merciless, and he brought the SS with him, and he basically, tried to crush the resistance in Czechoslovakia, and they're getting ready to send him to Paris to do exactly the same thing. And that's kind of the point of all this, is that he's being sent to Paris to squash the French resistance at that particular time. So they realize that they have a very short window, that if they're going to go through with the assassination, that they need to do it. Now, the funny thing is that Yusuf gets a communique from London, and it says, Operation Anthropoid proceed at the utmost importance. And it's like 5 words in that particular message, and he has to decode the entire message completely. But then when it's Lenkov is the Czechoslovakian, he's the political resistance member, and he shows up, and he pulls out this piece of paper, and he starts reading this communique, and it's very verbose, it's very long-winded.
We believe we see the situation clearly. Therefore, given the situation, any actions against officials of the German Reich do not come into consideration.
What I love about that scene is that the political arm of the resistance, he had never been in communication with London. He had never actually received a communique from London. So he assumed that that's how they would write a communique, that it would be all this verbose, unnecessary details, adjectives, adverbs. Yeah. No, that is not how a communique is sent at all. And that little clue right there lets the audience know, yeah, this communication is bullshit, but they have to find a way to, go about, fulfilling their orders, utmost importance, proceed, and not let this guy, not do anything that potentially pisses this guy off, or if this guy is actually a collaborator, lets him know that they're going to go through it. So he can't run to the Nazis and go, hey, yeah, they're coming for you. More on that later.
Well, he kind of steps right then and there. If he was a collaborator, he would have turned them in long time ago. Because this is literally the day before the assassination attempt. So they kind of figure out then and there, what? I mean, if he was a collaborator, he would have turned us in. We would have been screwed a long time ago. So.
And I know that this is based on a real dude, and I don't want to, disparage him by any stretch of the imagination. I know that part of this is fictionalized. And, you got to have your good guys and your bad guys, and you got to basically play it to where, there's some suspense for the audience, even if they're familiar with the story. But it's played brilliantly. It's played beautifully. It comes off very authentically. So, without doing a deep dive into the history of this, I don't know how accurate that is or isn't. I don't know if there was a level of mistrust between them or not. And I don't know that anybody ever will, just because of how everything turns out at the end of this one. But anyway, after they basically say, okay, you know what, we'll try to reestablish communication with London and confirm whether or not we're supposed to proceed with this, Jan and Yosef are like, yeah, we're going through with it. We have to go through with it. And the other resistance fighters that were dropped in, the other parachutists, are like, well, we report directly to you, so we're in as well.
Yeah.
And so they basically they review their plan. It's very haphazard. They don't have a whole lot of choice. There's not a lot of great options. It's not Ocean's 11.
No, it's absolutely not.
So I mean, essentially, they're going to be standing out on the street. One of them is going to walk in front of the vehicle and try to get it to slow down. And when it slows down, they're going to open fire on the vehicle with a Sten gun. And they're going to hope that there's not an armed vehicle following behind them as an armed escort. And if there is, they have one explosive device that they're going to try and stop that vehicle with. That's it. That's their master plan.
You can expect him at approximately 9:30 a.m.
And the weapons? At that range, the Sten gun should hit everything within the car.
And the armed escort?
We have found no pattern.
You know, the build up to the assassination attempt, the tension is perfect. It is like you feel every bit of tension that's going on with those characters. He's got the coat over his lap and he's trying to put the gun together, and you know, he's got the water canteen that has been turned into an improvised explosive, but you know, it's a canteen, so no one's going to think twice of him carrying this on the street. And when, you know, they ride bikes to where they're going to attempt to you know, perform the assassination, and it's a sunny day, so they have a mirror, and that's how they're going to signal each other, is using, you know, a reflected mirror, so he can let them know whether or not there's an armed vehicle following him. It is, like I said, it's very unromantic, I guess is the word I'm looking for here. It's not.
It's historically accurate is the best way to describe it.
Yeah, they're not portrayed as do or die heroes. They are not portrayed as, like, you know, special forces where they're, you know, got their mouth full of chaw and they're, you know, shining their guns and sharpening their knives. They're nervous as hell, you know, and none of them really thinks that they're going to live through this. And, you know, the fear is palpable with them. So when the vehicle comes, Yusuf steps out in front of the vehicle and he pulls the trigger on the Sten gun and it just clicks. And then he tries to cock the gun and it just clicks again. And the Germans start shooting at him. Like, literally everything about this, it's flawless. It is some of the best suspense and best tension I've seen in a movie in a long time. And I don't want to go too deep into detail, but the improvised explosive device gets thrown at the vehicle, and that's kind of like the, you know, couple of shots are fired, the canteen bomb goes off, and then they are running for their lives to get the hell out of there. And, you know, there is, you know, Nazis that are immediately hot on their heels. So they immediately try to get back to the safe house and lay low. And Jan and Yusuf are, you know, basically hiding, but they're listening to all the German broadcasts that are coming out, and they're, you know, making ridiculous reward offers, 10,000 crowns to whoever does it, and amnesty for any information that leads to the arrest of the, you know, potential assassins. Because what they do find out is the assassination attempt failed. Heydrich is in a hospital, and, you know, there's a new guy who's running things while he's recovering from the assassination attempt. And so they're in hiding for several days at this point. And
well,
then,
the other thing, too, is the political guys' fears do come true, because they do round up Czechoslovakians and start executing motherfuckers. They offer that reward and not getting the response they want, and then now they up the ante. And it's like, if we don't get information on these people, are assumed we're going to execute 3,000 Czechoslovakians.
Yeah. Well, and then Heydrich dies in hospital.
Yeah.
And apparently, they say this in passing in the movie, but apparently there's a rumor that some little town outside of Prague helped the parachutist who assassinated Heydrich. So they go and they kill every man there that's over the age of 16, and then they round up all the women and children and take them to a camp, which I'm sure it's not a summer camp. You know, I mean, it's very much indicated that it is more or less a concentration. Like I said, it's not a happy-go-lucky movie, and this is most definitely, this ain't Saving Private Ryan. It's not raw. Yeah, isn't America great? This is like, war is ugly and very unromantic. And really shitty things happen to people either that are trying to do, you know, the good thing and the right thing. Yeah. After Heydrich dies, basically the SS goes on full-blown terror mode. They're doing anything and everything that they can to try and find out who was, responsible for the assassination of Heydrich. And they're rounding up people on the street, and Lenka winds up getting shot because she runs from them when they're trying to round people up. And again, she doesn't have no great end monologue, no romantic moment with her and Yusuf. They're not like staring into each other. She's literally just shot while running away, and they don't even show it. So
yeah, they do. They show her getting shot.
They show her running. They show the German soldier lift his gun up, and then they show her fall.
Blood splattering, but it's obvious.
No, it's in
There's
blood.
Don't paint it like it's something that is not.
No. What I'm saying is,
she gets shot. She gets shot. You just don't see it. You just don't see it graphically.
So Curta was supposed to be at the assassination. He was supposed to be there to help them pull off the thing. He doesn't show up. He immediately, when he finds out that the assassination attempt fails, he immediately goes into panic mode. And Yusuf tells him, he tells Joseph that he's going to get his family and get out of Prague, that he's going to go on the run. And Yusuf tells him, if you try to run, they're going to know that you were involved and they'll kill you. Go home, sit still, be quiet, and just shut up. Just wait for things to blow. Yes, it's going to be bad, but it will blow over as long as they don't have anything to do. Well, Curta's a coward, and because he's afraid for his life and for his family, he goes to the Germans.
And you say your name is Carol Schroeder.
And basically says, you know what, I don't know where the men are now, but I know the family that they were staying with. And so the Nazis go and they round up the lady and husband and the son of the safe house, the people that have the safe house that Yen and Yusuf were staying at. And mom was given a cyanide capsule. She gets beaten by one of the Germans, and while they're trying to extract information out of her and beating her in front of her son and her husband, she pisses herself, and it's very sad to watch.
To me, it came off as she knew what she was doing. She pissed herself on purpose.
Yes.
So
she did it to elicit sympathy.
Yes. So and it works. The guy doing the interrogation lets her go into the bathroom. That's rule number one. If you're a fucking henchman, you don't let your captor go into the bathroom.
Well,
you should know better than that. Because she chops a cyanide pill and she dies. And it's scheisse, we fucked up.
Well, I was going to say, here's the thing. I'm pretty sure that he was a collaborator because he was interpreting German into Czech and Czech back into German again. So I'm pretty sure that he was a Czechoslovakian, and that's why he was sympathetic to her, because she's a Czechoslovakian too, and he works for the Germans, but he doesn't want to see a Czechoslovakian mother, basically be beaten in front of her husband and son. So that's why he lets her go into the bathroom to clean up. And she kills herself, and then basically they have the names of all the people involved. The Nazis are going to their homes. They're committing suicide before they can be taken and extracted. But the problem is that they get a hold of the violinist, her son, and they take him to interrogation, and they waterboard him using whiskey or vodka or bourbon, some alcohol. So I'm sure that wasn't terribly pleasant. But then, he was trying to be a violinist, so they take a hammer to his hands, and they beat him. It's very graphic. It's very in your face. It's very matter of fact.
You like to play the violin?
And they finally, basically, after they put his mother's decapitated head in his lap, he finally breaks, and he says that the parachutists, they're hiding out at the church, and he knows this because he's been delivering food to them while they've been in hiding. And that kicks off the third act of the film, which is basically the parachutists were basically, they had to be hidden in caskets and taken out of the church and smuggled out of the country, but that gets stopped. The Nazis are already on their way to the church as the hearses are, attempting to go and get the resistance fighters.
Yeah, the hearse is literally like just minutes too slow.
Yeah.
If they got there about 5-10 minutes before the Germans, they would have been out, and that would have been the end of the story. But they didn't. There's an epic showdown. And it is a great showdown. Very great showdown. And then here comes my probably second favorite part in this movie, which involves Jan again. Because where you see Jan shake. And at one point earlier in the movie, you see Josef hubcam Jan down. And you see him break down the gun and show him how to put the bullets back in, compose yourself. And this is where Jan becomes a hero, a true hero, and a good soldier, because he's holding down the fort, he's shooting motherfuckers up, and one of the resistance fighters breaks down in the middle of battle. So in the middle of this battle, a hail of bullets flying everywhere, Jan goes across the fire, sits with this guy, and helps him do the same process. Unloads the gun, loads it back up, gets the guy's center back in there, and it was brilliant. It was the best arc in the whole movie. As a matter of fact, it's the only character arc in this whole movie.
No, that's not true.
Yes.
We'll get into that. But anyway, the thing about the church battle, this is what I was referring to earlier. They literally went to the church. They built a set that was identical to the interior of the church, specifically so when they shot this scene, it would be as accurate as possible. So the way that it works out is that there's a group of 3 of them that are in the upper level of the church, and then there is a group of 4 of them that are down in the crypt. And the 3 at the top of the church are supposed to be, keeping guard, and the 4 in the bottom are supposed to be resting, and they're supposed to be swapping out until the hearses arrive and they get smuggled out of the country. Well, when the Nazis actually arrive, you have the 3 trapped on the top and the 4 trapped in the crypt. So they can't support each other. So the 3 in the top, it is an epic gun battle. It is beautifully rendered. It all makes sense. You get a sense of everything that's going on. But here's the part of it that I find fascinating. Apparently, the gun battle in the film, it lasts for about 20 minutes with everything that's going on.
It's a long scene. I think it's probably closer to 25-30. It's very long.
So yeah, well, I mean that kind of makes sense.
The whole thing, that gun battle, and then later when they go down to the crypt. So the whole church scene is a substantial part of that movie. Yeah,
in real life, the battle, they actually held them off for 6 hours.
Yeah.
So that's kind of insane. That 7 dudes with handguns and 2 Stens, held off a huge group of Nazi soldiers just based on that particular location. But anyway, I don't want to.
They got the high ground.
It's over, Anakin. I have the high ground.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Sorry, I gotta get my Star Wars jam in there.
battle, this is like legitimately, this is the exact kind of action scene that I love, because everything in this battle has consequences, everything has stakes, and everything means something. It's not just a bunch of assholes shooting up a place because it looks cool and Robert Rodriguez style explosions going off in the background. And you know what I'm talking about.
The same thing.
Like literally, when they run out of bullets and they're, the Germans are throwing grenades at them and they're trying to throw them back, you feel every bit of that. Just the tension and the just sheer panic of everything that's going on. And so, the three in the top, they fall, and then the Germans decide to turn their attention to the four down in the crypt, and they're in the crypt and they're trying to actually dig through the wall to get to the sewer line because they might be able to get out that way. But then the Germans start flooding the basement of the church with fire hoses. And so as the water's getting deeper and deeper, and then the Germans start coming in and shooting at the place, and they basically run out of bullets. Is really what it boils down to. They run out of bullets, and each man saves his last bullet to take his own life with. And it's a hard watch. It's a hard end. It is not, again, it's not, at the end where the old man falls at the tombstone and says, "I've lived a good life, haven't I?"
Tell me I've led a good life.
What?
Tell me I'm a good man.
No, every one of the main characters in this film, except Marie, is dead at the end. It doesn't matter who they were or what they did or how involved they were, but they're all in Czechoslovakia considered heroes. But the interesting thing about it, and it's kind of buried in some text at the end of the movie, is that when Heydrich died and these guys managed to basically hold that church for 6 hours and kill an awful lot of German soldiers, at that point Winston Churchill decided that the Munich Pact, which is what they, ceded Czechoslovakia to Germany, was null and void. Actually, that was England saying, no, Czechoslovakia is not a part of Germany. It's its own separate country, and these people are fighting for their freedom. So it really did have the impact that they wanted it to have. It really did actually show that, yes, there was a Czechoslovakian resistance, and yes, they were on the side of the Allies, and yes, they were fighting against the Germans. They were not part of Germany proper. Yeah. So, plus, they probably saved a whole lot of Parisians from, getting the same treatment that the Czechoslovakians did.
Yes, they did.
There's a theme that's revisited in this film that, Marie and Jan, they're both young. And for them, war is about, romanticism and heroics and this and that. And Yusuf and Linka are both, they're older and they've been involved in war before, which is to say, more than likely they remember World War I because they grew up in it. But neither of them has a romantic notion of what war is or how you fight a actual war. That it's a very ugly, very matter-of-fact thing, and heroes don't always live. Really takes the shine off of a lot of war movies when it shows like the ugly reality of that kind of thing. So you had never seen this before. What are your thoughts on this? Because I'm dying to hear this. We have not talked about this movie since you watched it. So I really want to know what you thought about this.
Well, when you first said like, oh, I understand, in our last episode, you're like, this is a good film, and I don't know why people don't talk about it more. I can tell you why people don't talk about it more. It's it's a very average film. It has moments of goodness, but some of those moments actually kind of work against each other. I think this movie would have been better off if they would have focused more on the assassination attempt, and maybe kind of expedited the ending of it, which sucks. And I hate to say this because I really do enjoy that the standoff in the church is so well done. It sucks because it's one of my favorite parts of the whole movie, but it goes on too long. They really could have condensed that down to about 10, 15 minutes. I don't think it needed to be 30 minutes. From the time they land to the assassination attempt is like about an hour and 10 minutes. And then after that is like another hour. They could condense that last hour to 30 minutes. It really did not need to go that extra hour. I think if you would have trimmed that down, it would have been a better paced movie. I think the pacing of it is a little slow. So helping that pacing along would have made it better. There's not enough tension in this film. There are scenes that have tension, but they come very sporadically. The first scene's at the very beginning, but then you don't get another scene of real tension until the part where they're in the cafe, where they're in the back doing the meeting the resistance, and the two ladies are out in the front in the cafe. And one of the guys fucks up and makes like a huge rack in the back, and he
knocks a chair over.
He knocks the chair over. I think it's like the same guy that turns turncoat.
Curta? I think it was. I think it was.
That fucker. They should have shot him right then and there. So that was the other tension scene. And the thing that sucks about that scene is that you've seen that scene a million times in other movies.
Yeah.
In so many other ways. So it wasn't that great. And then the actual assassination attempt is a very good scene too there. You could like you said, you could feel the fear coming off them. And that they really like, we don't know if this is gonna be a success, or this is gonna be a complete bust or what. Lucky for them, it landed in the middle and nobody really got hurt. Of course, that's bad in the end. And then the other tension, is at the end, with the shootout, which unfortunately, because it's history, these motherfuckers are gonna die. So that sucks, but it doesn't totally take away from that battle. It's a very forgettable film. I forgot most of the details of the movie. The only things I really remember were the stuff that I mentioned, the stuff that really stood out to me. The other thing is there's no villain. There really isn't. There's a target. There's a target. There's an objective, but there's not a villain. There's nobody they're really trying to avoid. Yeah, they're trying to avoid the Nazis, but there's no real Nazi representation. There's not that one guy like in like take for instance Inglourious Basterds. Christoph Waltz's character.
Yeah. Thank you.
He's the embodiment of the German army.
Yeah.
There's a clear antagonist there. I know historically there isn't one in the story. There's no real cat and mouse in it. There's supposed to be kind of spies and espionage, kind of. So there's no, like I said, there's no cat and mouse action going on there. So there's nobody to root against to help you root for your characters. That's detrimental. So I know this is a big thing for you. You like historically accurate things, and I'm sure this thing was probably historically accurate to the fucking T. So while it's made historically accurate, I can see now why sometimes film studios will do little embellishments here and there to give a little more drama to it. And I know it's not meant to be romanticized, and I get that. Mm-hmm. But when I said that it has something else to kind of help bring the story up. And the closest comparison I could bring this to would be like Fury, where Fury is the same way. Fury doesn't have like a real antagonist.
No.
The German army is the antagonist. but there's a bigger scale going on there too, and you really got to know those characters. You know, it wasn't so much about the objective with them. For them, it's about knowing those characters, those men in that tank, and how they operate as a team.
Yeah, Fury is most definitely a character
so you got more appreciation for those characters, where I didn't have quite that connection with these guys. The closest connection I got was to Jan, and I still think Jan is the only guy that actually had a real story arc. Nobody else really changed or progressed.
Yusuf was Yusuf from the beginning of the film to the end of the film. Exactly, with the exception that he did find Lenka. There was some romance there. I will agree with you on one thing. You say Adolf Hitler, everybody knows who that is. They know what he did. You say, you know, Himmler, Goebbels, Mengele. There are a ton of famous Nazis that people are familiar with what they did, so you don't have to talk about it. And Inglourious Bastards, you know, well, Hitler's coming to our film premiere. Well, yeah, okay, of course he's the target. He's Hitler.
He's a target, but he's not the antagonist.
But no. But
there's
what
a
I'm
difference.
saying is,
there's a clear-cut antagonist.
No, I get that. But what I'm saying is that you know Hitler is a villain. You don't have to spend film time explaining who this person is. But Heydrich, he's the third most powerful Nazi, and how many people do you know even have any idea who this guy was?
Right. But that's the problem.
What I'm getting at is
he's not a real integral part of the film. That guy doesn't speak fucking 2 words except for when he's getting shot at, and I don't know what the fuck they are except for maybe I got shot or shoot these motherfuckers.
That's exactly the point I was about to make, is that the one thing that would have improved this film is to actually give us that background on who this guy is. Flesh him out, because if you're a World War II buff, you might know who he is. But if you're the general audience, especially an American audience, you have no clue who this man is whatsoever. And a text card at the beginning of it and some details being dropped via dialogue throughout the film, it's not enough. What this movie really needed is that they literally could have shot scenes of who this man was. Now, I'm sure budget limitations had a lot to do with that. But you know, again, it's $6.5 million. This is a super cheap film by any stretch of the imagination. Yes. But I'm sure that anytime that you involve the German military in it, and if you just have Heydrich go through his regular day or anything like that, the film most definitely would have benefited from them actually giving us some background on Heydrich and who he was and what he was really about and what he really did to Prague and why the Czechs despise this man and want him dead. So yeah, that right there, that is the one flaw. I will absolutely give it up to you. You nailed it. That was my issue with it as well, because I didn't know who this man was. Yeah. And I didn't know why it was important that he be dead. Now, granted, when you play it out that, you know, this is the guy that basically killed all these people in Prague, and he was getting ready to be sent to Paris to do the same thing. Well, okay, great. Now I have a feel for the impact of killing this guy, but I still have no reason why. I mean, other than, you know, he's third in line to the Nazi Third Reich. He's the third highest ranking officer in the Nazi ranks. Yeah. That's great. But again, that doesn't tell me a whole lot, because I know a handful of Nazis who are more famous that I know by name, that I would recognize them if you told me who they were or said their name. So I get exactly where you're coming from, and that right there, I'm not worried about the arcs, because this is a to B to C story. These men were dropped in, these men had a mission, these men went to pursue this mission, these men died like heroes. That's the history, and again, I know that it was accurately reconstructed. I know it was shot in the exact locations where this stuff really happened. I know that the assassination attempt was actually recreated from the Nazi reports about the assassination attempt. So no bullshit on that one. That is legitimately how it played out. And I love that about it, because it's not, you know, Captain Sharpshooter behind a park bench with a dog camouflaging his pistol and he's silently shooting under his elbow. Bullshit. This guy was going to like step out in front of a car and open fire with a machine gun, and that went to hell. just dumb luck and an improvised explosion is what killed this guy. And it didn't kill him right away. It was not like a hail this a victory. There's a chunk of this where they think they failed and they're, they feel like complete failures and they're terrified for their life for what they did. And that's the part of the movie that I love, that part of that tension right there, because I wasn't that familiar with the history of this. And that tension right there for an uninitiated audience is wonderful, because they get back and that's when Jan has his breakdown where he wants to live because he's fallen in love with Marie and he's got to see a way through this. And that's when Yusuf takes the gun out and takes all the bullets out of the clip and says, pay attention to the detail, breathe. You're going to be okay. We'll get through this. However it turns out, we're going to get through this. And it's beautifully acted. It's beautifully realized. And then later on in the film, when he uses that exact same technique to calm the other guy down, who's having that exact same I don't want to die moment, it's flawless. It's beautiful. He took something that he learned from somebody who had been... And the funny thing is that you could see that Yusuf obviously had that moment and somebody did that to him. That's not actually put on film or articulated in words, but the way that Jan takes it and then he shows, and if I'm not mistaken, I want to say that the guy that he showed it to, his name is Yusuf as well. So there's a symmetry there. Because I know that there was like 2 Yusufs and 2 Jans in the parachutist group that were defending the church at the end. But there's just an honesty to this film that I admire it. And if, like, the guy that directed this, here's 2 things that I have. You're saying it's a perfectly average film. And you know what? I'm willing to let that slide. If you're not as enthusiastic about the history or the accuracy as I am, I could see where, I've seen movies like this before. I saw Valkyrie, and that was so much more exciting. Well, that was kind of the point, that it's not exciting. It's fucking terrifying, number 1. But number 2, this movie has a 66% on Rotten Tomatoes from the critics.
Mm-hmm.
How does this have a similar rating to the Transformers? This is an infinitely better film.
Well, you say that, but I just told you it's a very average film, and that's a very average score. So as much as, and you know me, I put 0 stock in Rotten Tomatoes. I say this all the fucking time. But I have to agree. It's not a bad film. It's not a bad film at all. But it's a very long and after forgettable thing. Again, the deficiencies is there's no antagonist. And the runtime, if you would have trimmed those back and added something else to it, it would have been a better film.
So
I don't know what to tell you. Plus, again, there's no star power behind it. You know Cillian Murphy. I know Cillian Murphy. But I guarantee if you ask somebody who Cillian Murphy is, they're like, fuck if I know. If you show them a picture of it, like, oh yeah, he's the fucking Scarecrow from Batman.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're not going to remember him in 28 Days Later. They're not going to remember him in Sunshine. They're not going to remember him in Peaky Blinders. Right. They're going to remember him as Scarecrow. For the vast majority of people, that's who Cillian Murphy is, Scarecrow. But
it's not a knock on Cillian Murphy, because like I said, he's a good actor. He does very well in this film, considering how dull his character actually is in all reality. And let's face it, he's a very dull, dry character. And I'm sure that's probably how the actual guy probably really was. But let's face it, he really wasn't given a whole lot to work with.
Well, like I said,
because he doesn't have an arc.
No, he doesn't. And again, you're right. They have stuff that happens to them, and they have events that they're involved in. But they're not handled like fictional characters. That's what I'll say. In real life, most people don't change a whole lot in 6 weeks. 6 weeks from today, you're still going to be you. I'm still going to be me. We're basically going to be the same person. This is exactly the same thing. There's no arc here. They have a mission. They're there to get the job done. End of story. That's it. That's the meat and potatoes of this film. But I will also say this. Jamie Dornan, who played Yen, I think his performance is understated. It's masterfully handled. When he has his breakdown, it feels like watching somebody have a breakdown. When he falls in love with Maria, and let's be honest, that's not tough to do because she's gorgeous. Everything about his character is completely satisfying to me. At the end of the day, would you recommend this film?
No.
No?
And again, it's not that I hate it. There's just other war films that are more entertaining. So no, I can't recommend it.
No? Really?
No.
So,
sorry.
See, now I highly recommend this one, and again, there's some craft here. Yes, it's done on a budget, but it does not look like a cheap film.
No, it looks like a $20 million film all day long.
But the other end of the spectrum is that if you like some historical accuracy as opposed to historical spectacle, this is your jam. This is the kind of movie that you probably would really look forward to seeing. If you watched Master and Commander and you liked that, you'll like this. Shit, I don't know. What would you recommend they check out?
Well, I mean, there's any number of classic war films out there that you can go watch to get your spectacle and all that stuff. What I would recommend is Place, which is every bit as dark and depressing, but I think is a better film, is Fury.
Oh, I love Fury. And I'm just going to say, Fury is a character study. And it is, told beautifully, because you have the new guy that's just been assigned to the crew, and he's being introduced to all these characters, and he's getting to see like who these people are and how they became this way through the last days of World War II. I love everything about that movie, and I cannot say enough good things about Fury. But in the same vein, you brought up Inglourious Basterds, and I'm thinking, Inglourious Basterds, it's a World War II movie, yeah, but Quentin Tarantino, I love him.
It's a fairy tale.
All these movies, but Quentin Tarantino isn't going for historic accuracy. No. Quentin Tarantino does highbrow grindhouse. Yeah. And
here's the thing that Inglourious Basterds does so well that I wish this film would have did. Tension. There are so many great scenes of tension in Inglourious Basterds. I mean, the very opening scene, the scene where they're in the bar, the scene where they're in the cafe. I mean, there's just so many great, and they're long, drawn-out scenes of tension, and they don't get old. And I'm not a fan of Inglourious Basterds. I'll admit, it ranks very low in my Tarantino pantheon of films. I mean, at the very bottom is Django, and then The Hateful Eight, and then Inglourious Basterds. No, but what Inglourious Basterds does is tension really, really, really well. And I wish there was more scenes of tension in this film, especially with it being an assassination attempt film. But
I appreciate it. I appreciate it for its authenticity. You think because it didn't fictionalize some things to amp it up for the audience that it's not as good as it could be.
Right, but I'll give kudos where it's due. It is very well shot. It is beautiful looking. It's not efficient storytelling, unfortunately, because they drag on too long. But the performances are good. And there's a lot of good things in this movie. It's just not a movie for me. And the funny thing is it comes back to character, where there's movies where I'm like, why do you character? We got all this other stuff going on. So the coin is flipped. I'm on the side of character. I wanted more character in it. And then you're like, no, the story and accuracy is all you really need in this thing. So it's funny how that role reversal just happened in this review.
I wouldn't say that. I'm just going to say that there is plenty of character in this, but it's far more realistic and far more nuanced. It's not character development like you get in a fictionalized story, because you can encapsulate a life in 2 hours when you get to actually say what happens and when it happens and how it happens and to who. But when you're taking real people and, basically retelling a historical event, there are character traits here. Again, Jamie Dornan's performance is masterful.
Linka, the woman that played Linka, is another stand-up performance too that we didn't really talk about. Her acting is impeccable in this.
Well, there's one other character, and he's completely missed. And I'm sure there's probably not another review out there that even mentioned him. And that is the safe house, the dad. I love every shot that he's in, and I'll tell you why. Because he has, I think, 2 lines of dialogue.
You 2 boys looking for work then?
Yes.
We are always looking for a man to clean the cinders out of the locomotives.
Thank you, Mr. Mullenix. We'll keep that in mind.
About his particular performance is that it's very obvious he knows exactly what's going on. He knows exactly what his wife is up to. He knows exactly who Jan and Josef are. He knows what Lenka and Maria are doing there. But he does not ask any questions. He does not acknowledge anything that's going on. And he's in the background of several shots where he'll be reading the newspaper and he'll hear some dialogue exchange, and you'll see his newspaper come down and he'll kind of look, and then he'll realize that they notice him noticing, and he'll put his paper back up, but not in like a panic rush way, just in I'm not stupid. I know who you are and I know why you're here. You guys should shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Because other people will figure it out too. And it is so nuanced. It is so subtle, but it's so beautifully done. And at the end of the day, when the Germans show up at that house, they drag him out too. Now, we never actually see what happened to him. I'm pretty positive that he didn't make it through, because we know what happened to the mom and we know what happened to the son. But he had to endure all that for nothing. So, it's like those little subtle details. That director could have completely skipped out that he ever was in any shots at all. He could have completely just no, you don't need to sit in that chair and look over your paper like you hear what's going on. Just go stand over by the window. We don't even need you in this shot. It's those little details that I love about this. And this is the one reason why I think you should rewatch this film, because now there's this story going on. Well, there's this story going on in the foreground, and so you've got all the details. You know everything that's going on. If you watch it again, you get to appreciate all the little details that are going on in the background that really flesh out a lot of this for me. And that's why I enjoy this movie so much, is because there is some authenticity to it, but there's this attention to detail with everything that's going on in the background. And there are no bit parts in this, from the veterinarian who does the stitches to the little guy that helps them hook up with the resistance in Prague. Every one of these people feels real and realized to me. So,
anything else you need to say?
What are we watching next?
Next we're watching Euro Trip, because Scotty doesn't fucking know.
Solid pick.
And if you don't know, you're going to know.
I look forward. I've seen it before, but I look forward to watching it again. And yeah, it'll be nice to actually watch something that's a little less heavy than this. So we will catch you next time on Tony and Mike Watch the World Burn.
Rock.
Peace.
If it went to plan there, maybe they would have lived happy ever after. But I think after that, there was no way Bruce was really, well, I don't know, because he almost went back when she nursed him back to health. So I don't know. I still think in the end it wouldn't have worked out.
See, I think she did love him. He did love her. I think they both, like, society put expectations on the kind of relationships that each was allowed to have. And so they both sought to, like, escape their station.